Mark Brennan of Fight on State with our weekly Bill O'Brien press conference wrap, joined as usual by Greg Pickel. And yeah, we're rocking the matching shirts, the Fight on State Under Armour polo shirts. Hey, obviously, Greg, big week this week. Penn State coming off a huge win over Iowa. Ohio State sneaks one out against Purdue, and now we have the Ineligible Bowl, or whatever they're calling it. Right. A big game for both teams. We're here at Beaver Stadium. They're lining the field as we speak. This place, I'm assuming, is going to be rocking and rolling with the whiteout or White House or whatever. Bill O'Brien definitely into this game. One of the things I really liked about what he said today, you know, he was asked about the significance of it, and he's like, I'm not going to downplay this. This is a huge game. It's a big game for both teams. I think both teams seem to be kind of healthy coming into it. What are some of the things that you took out of today's press conference?
Yeah, he really talked a lot about the atmosphere today and what he expects. You know, he talked again about, as he has most weeks, about he wants the student section there early. He mentioned he wants 108,000 in by warm-ups. Don't think there's any chance he gets that, but it's a nice dream to have. A lot of the things he talked about today were rather simplistic. He talked about the need to contain Braxton Miller. I think everyone understands that coming in. Nonetheless, it's not been understated, and I felt really interesting the fact that, you know, he's putting a lot of that on the defensive ends and defensive tackles to really get upfield and make that transition. And it's not something we really saw against Chris Coyer and Temple, or really Tyler Tettleton in Ohio. Of course, Miller brings in more of that than some of those guys did, but it's something, again, you really look back at, and Penn State struggled on the defensive line at times, containing quarterbacks that are able to get outside of the pocket on design runs. The other big takeaway I felt was that Naeem Wortman, the true freshman linebacker, he said he'd be able and eligible to play if Penn State needs him. That's what O'Brien said. So at this point, it doesn't seem to be clear or imminent that they'll medical redshirt him, or even that they'll attempt to at the end of the season.
Yeah, I'm not sure that they would need him in this game because their linebackers are playing real well, but one of the real keys with Wortman is if they suffer an injury in that linebacker core, and, you know, knock on wood for Penn State, they have generally been healthy. Having, you know, along those lines, Donovan Smith for the last few weeks has been playing with a big club on his hand. My sources tell me he's been spotted around campus without the big wrap on his hand. Have you heard anything about that?
Yeah, I've heard the same thing, just essentially the fact that it appears he probably has that cast off. He may still play with it. I mean, I guess we'll see more tomorrow when practice opens up. But essentially, yeah, it seems like he's going to have the cast off. And O'Brien was asked about that, what it's like playing with the broken hand. And essentially, he surmised what most of you could assume, the fact that it makes it difficult when you only have one hand to be able to do things with. It makes it difficult to completely finish your block. So having that full hand back will obviously be a boon to Smith and for this offensive line. And I really think that that's going to be a big factor this Saturday. Just the fact that even though, I mean, you didn't really notice it much against Iowa because you didn't need to. But when you see the pass rush with John Simon and the other guys that Ohio State provides on defense, it's certainly something to keep in mind and note going into this game.
Yeah, real quick, another note on Braxton Miller. Obviously, he was injured in the Purdue game, looked really bad. And now it sounds like they're saying he's going to be okay. I'm not sure if that's gamesmanship. I'm not sure if he's really going to be okay. But I specifically asked Bill O'Brien, listen, you face some running quarterbacks. Has anybody kind of been at this level? And he said no. I mean, with all due respect to the guys that they've faced, Braxton Miller is kind of different in how he can run the ball, and obviously he's not a great passer, but he can pass the ball when he needs, and that's going to be really big. I mean, obviously if he plays, that's a much different Ohio State offense.
Yeah, I think he may have oversold the fact of Braxton Miller's ability to pass. Granted, he has over 1,000 yards. His completion percentage just isn't very good, but of course O'Brien's not going to sit there and say that. But I think you're absolutely right. I think that we know this Penn State secondary can be vulnerable. There's no question about it. It can be. And Miller's a type of guy that if he gets outside enough and has enough time, if he's back there 7 seconds, 8 seconds, and he's scrambling in the pocket, he's likely going to find somebody downfield. And that's why what Bill O'Brien said rings to more true, is the fact that it's not about stopping him every play. It's about stopping him enough plays and making enough plays to not let his big plays overcome and overshadow this game.
Yeah, just by way of analysis, I think when you look at Penn State, I don't want to say anybody's perfectly built to handle a Braxton Miller, but with the solid front seven, obviously, you know, Jordan Hill played like an All-American against Iowa, really stepping up his game at defensive tackle. The linebackers, I mean, Mahdi, Hodges, Carson, Hull, when he comes in, they have an excellent front seven, and I think that's going to make for just an outstanding matchup. That's going to be really fun to watch. And I think at the end of the day, I think Penn State, again, you may give up some big plays, but I think you do it and you move on, and overall you try to win the war as opposed to the battle. Offensively, a lot of questions about Penn State's NASCAR. You know, we've been talking about this for a long time at Fight on State. When I think it was in the spring,
sure,
when Stankiewicz inadvertently let it slip that they were practicing NASCAR, and people were like, "Did you say NASCAR? What do you mean?" No, I didn't. I just slipped. I didn't really mean it. Well, obviously now we know it's their hurry-up offense, and they used it to such incredible effect against Iowa, and a lot of the credit for that goes obviously to Bill OBrien for bringing it in, but also Matt McGloin. And there were some great comments today about McGloin, kind of poking fun at him, but also the respect that the coaches and team have for what he's been able to do with this hurry-up offense.
Yeah, I believe the quote from Michael Zordich was that it's debatable that you could call him an athlete, he said with a laugh, but there's no doubt that McGloin has been much better this year, especially the last 5 games, at getting out of the pocket and making plays happen when the rush has invaded the initial pocket area. So I think that's something to note. And then the NASCAR offense, like you said, it's just been unbelievable. The effectiveness of it has been superb. And Urban Meyer believes that he said yesterday in his press conference that he hopes Ohio State's no huddle can help quiet this crowd. Well, so might Penn State's, because when they're running so quickly and play so much and things of that nature, you don't give the fans a lot of time to get up and moving. But at the same token, you're right. I think that this NASCAR offense just provides such an element to this team. And O'Brien quipped that he wasn't going to tell the person that asked the question or anybody what goes into that play calling or how they decide to make those plays. But it's clear that whatever they do use to determine that, it's working. Yeah,
one of the better lines of the press conference, as well as some of the things you mentioned, was a reporter said something along the lines of, Matt McGloin's not really a dual-threat quarterback. And O'Brien just over-dramatically, what do you mean he's not a dual-threat quarterback? And I think, at the end of the day, when he was serious about it, Bill O'Brien said, if you looked at what Tom Brady does in New England, and obviously that's a point of reference because he coached the guy.
Sure.
It's the ability to kind of move around in relatively small spaces and avoid things. That's what McGloin has done a great job against Iowa. There were times when I thought he was absolutely dead to rights, and he just either sidestepped and was so smooth, and that's where he's improved absolutely so much. Once again, Bill O'Brien making an impassioned plea. You touched on it earlier, for the fans to get here early and often. I believe that we're going to see this place packed for the first time this season. 108,000. You're still a student here. What are your thoughts? What are you hearing around campus?
Absolutely, yeah. You can't really find a ticket on campus right now. I know a lot of people that are. You just can't do it. And if you are, you're paying a good chunk of change for it. Same with the tickets throughout the stadium. Again, if you look on StubHub and those other ticket-selling websites, there's a lot of money to be had and made for people selling tickets because there's just not that many out there. There's no guest ticketing available, so it will be, for the most part, all Penn State students in the Nittany Lions student section. And, yeah, I think this atmosphere is going to be unbelievable. You have the picture up from Nittanyville on the message boards, and, again, that's something that we haven't really seen so far this season, and quite frankly, not in a long time. I believe they said it was a record number of tents. The atmosphere on campus, I think one of the players mentioned it today, and it's pretty much the same thing I hear, is that, is it Friday yet? Is it Saturday yet? Is it 5:30 Saturday yet? I think there's a lot of people excited for this game, and you almost have to be. If you're a student, you don't get the opportunity to go to a bowl game just like these players do, and maybe look forward to that. So this is your big home game as a supporter, as a student, as a fan. So for these folks that will be coming up here Saturday to tailgate, to go to the game, to experience what Penn State Iowa at a 5:30 kick, or excuse me, Penn State Ohio State in a 5:30 kick is all about, I think there's plenty of excitement. Yeah, we're here on Tuesday. We tape this. I always like to say that because sometimes people watch it a little later in the week, and it's pretty well known in this area how packed Paternoville is. But you can check it out on my Twitter account, Mark X Brennan, and I'm not trying to boost Twitter stuff. I'm not a great tweeter, but if you can't get to the site, we have it on our premium form, but you could just check out Mark X Brennan. That's my Twitter account. I have a photo of Paternoville, and it is jam-packed already on a Tuesday. So I'm sorry, did I say Paternoville? No, that's the funny thing that I posted on the website. It is hard to get past that, and I actually we should run a poll. What are people going to call it? Paternoville, Nittanyville, whatever you're calling it. There's a lot of people in the Ville out there. One last quick point, injury-wise, I think Penn State's in pretty good shape, about as good as they've been all year. Ohio State, I do still think there's some question there about Braxton Miller after watching him on the field. But overall, I think Penn State is the healthier of the two teams. Ohio State's had some issues with their linebackers.
And one other final point, for the Penn State players, we've said it throughout that they were involved in none of the garbage that went on here. And to me, it's very cool that they have the opportunity to play in this sort of atmosphere. And they put themselves in the position to be able to do it. And I'll say this much, too. For the Ohio State players, they were not involved with what went on there, too. So for both of these teams to be able to play in a game of this magnitude, I think is just very cool. And this is kind of what Penn State, Ohio State ought to be all about.
Absolutely. I think that when you look at those, I know a lot of people, not necessarily students or football players, but people that when Penn State lost those first two games were really disappointed because they felt this game could be what it became after Penn State rolled off 5 wins in a row. And I think that pretty much sums it up in terms of what the atmosphere is going to be like this weekend. People wanted this to be a big game, wanted it to be loud, wanted it to be at night, and it's pretty close to being at night. So it is what people wanted it to be. And as for the players, I don't think they could ask for a better position to be in after the first 2 weeks. I think if you would have asked a lot of them, quite frankly, after the first 2 weeks, if they expected it to be like what it is to build up for this game this week, I don't know if they would maybe have agreed that it would be like this at that point.
Well, they would have said it. They would have said it, but they may not have believed it.
Right, absolutely right. So I think that as the players, they've put themselves in a position to get this type of crowd, to get this type of energy and excitement, and I think it boils over well into Saturday.
Yeah, as you can see, as I mentioned, I think you can see out there, they're lined field, so the field looks immaculate. It looked a little beat up for the Northwestern game, but I think it's going to be back looking real good. Hopefully we get good weather this week. Right. Should be a great game, and again, I'm glad that both teams have the opportunity to play in a game of this magnitude. Anyway, that's good. We're going to wrap it up. That's our weekly Bill O'Brien press conference recap. I'm Mark Brennan. This is Greg Pickel. We're sporting cool shirts. You're probably not. See you next week.